Welcome to the Sustainable Travel Podcast. I'm Emma, your host from Matt Travel. This is a podcast that interviews a range of different travelers from different backgrounds to see what sustainable travel means to them. And today I am here with Carmen and Michael from Ruamar. Ruamar is an immersive tourism company operating in Portugal, and it prides itself on foodie adventures and showcasing local culture, in particular getting their clients to step off usual tourist places in Portugal. And today we're here to talk about how immersive travel can be a more sustainable way. Hi, you guys.
Hi, Emma. Really nice to see you. And thank you very much for having us on your podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too. I'm really happy to have you both. We connected a while ago, actually, through another podcast guest. So this feels like kind of a full circle moment now.
Yeah, a colleague of ours. Yeah. She's the one that turned us on to your podcast, actually, I think, right?
Yeah, that was Marta, who is based in Portugal as well and has one of the experiences that like gels really well with what you guys are doing. So yeah, it's definitely all interlinked there, and I love that. So for you guys, can you tell us a little bit more about the company in your own words, what it is you do and how you got into all of this?
Sure, I can start. I think it all started when we're married. We're a married couple. We came to Portugal on a vacation, and we fell
An
in.
anniversary.
Yes, anniversary, and we fell in love with Portugal itself. We traveled from Lisbon. We drove up north. We kind of stopped at a lot of little towns and villages along the way, and then we also went down south to the Algarve, and then back. So the company was kind of born. We now live in Portugal. The company was born out of trying to build the same kind of experience that we had, that we fell in love with here, and helping people to understand how much Portugal really has to offer, just beyond maybe what they might have known just visiting Lisbon or just visiting Porto.
Yeah. And do you think that you guys normally travel that way? Because that's quite a lot of Portugal to cover in one go.
Yeah, Carmen and I love to travel, and Carmen loves. Well, I wouldn't say Carmen loves to travel more than me, but she was much more traveled when we met,
Yeah.
and she's really open. She's really open experiences for me in wanting to get out to different places, see different things. And the way that I think as a couple we've developed our traveling experiences is we don't like to we don't like to get caught in the main touristy spots. Using Portugal as an example, a lot of people come to Portugal and they tend to stay in Lisbon or Porto, which are the two biggest cities. And those cities are amazing, with amazing culture, history, things you can see and do, and food and all that. But for us, in 2017, when we came here, that Carmen was mentioning, I think we were here for 2 weeks. And we really made it a point to get out of those cities and drive ourselves and take the trains and go to the little towns and try, like just get off the beaten path. That's the way we like to travel. And so that's the way that we like to set up our experiences for our clients.
And we do that everywhere we travel. We really we try to set aside enough time to be able to do that and slow down a little bit, rather than try to tick everything off in 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked a lot on this podcast about like how even just slowing down by 1 or 2 days, it can make such a difference to your experience, because the typical tourist will go to the average place they go for 3 days. That's like the maximum, which I'm sure like to you guys who travel the way you do, that's absolutely unheard of and like wild, but you don't really get enough. I think you don't really get enough of an idea of a place. And like you said, if you can go just beyond those kind of main places that international tourists go, you get this feeling, right, of like it's just different. Like you learn a little bit more, you kind of learn to appreciate more, I suppose is the right way to say it.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Can I just share just a quick example of something that we ran into about 2 weeks ago? We were doing a tour of one of the castles here, and we met a family from the Philippines. And I'm not sure how long the flight is from the Philippines to Portugal. I'm not sure if they told us, but we were very interested in what they had done while they'd been here, and we said, so where have you guys? Where have you gone? What have you done? And the husband, the father, pretty much said, well, we're coming here today. We did Sintra. We've been to Lisbon, and I don't know. Everything else is a blur. And we were like, well, do you get like when are you leaving? They're like, oh, we're leaving tomorrow. So for us, I mean, I guess some people like to travel that way, but for us, like you were saying, you don't take anything in. You don't get the feel of the place you're going to, and that's really important for us to do the slow travel and see more than just the normal touristy things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think even that phrasing, like, oh, we've done Sintra, like Sintra's like a huge, like kind of county almost. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't really say you've done it, like unless you've been there for months and months, you know? So
Mhm.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
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 absolutely. But yeah, and it's exhausting, I think, to travel like that as well. I mean, that's a workout.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it literally is. So is that kind of where the business came from then? Just that one trip where you kind of fell in love and you were like, we really love this country and we want to set up shop here?
I mean, it came from a few things. So my background is I'm a tech marketer, and so I'm blending a bit of what I'm very good at with travel,
Mhm.
and Michael's a filmmaker, and there's so much about, well, I won't speak for you, but so much about the light here and other things that it's a blend of what we do or have done in our careers, and also what our passion is, travel, and how we have always traveled. We've been together for about 20 years, so it's blending all of those things and finding a way to connect it to the local community. I think that that's the most important piece of it for us. We're not the experts. We don't want to pretend we're the experts on Portugal. We want to make sure that in everything we do, we connect. Our tour guides are all people who live here, who have known neighborhoods and villages and streets their entire lives, and can introduce us and others to the local pastries and experiences and vistas that if you're not a local, you wouldn't know. If you could turn around that corner, you get the most gorgeous view. So it's blending all of that together.
And I think back to Emma. I think that the question was also kind of why we started the company,
Mm.
right? And for Carmen and I, we've already talked about how when we travel, we like to immerse ourselves in the culture. And now that we've lived here for 3 years now, and it's been very, very important for us to not, I don't want to say not be the typical immigrants, but we want to do more than we want to be more than immigrants. We really want to be part of this country.
Yeah.
And it was always a plan for us to start a business here. And to be honest, I think that a travel company wasn't the first business idea we had, but some things changed for us and led us down this path.
Yeah.
And we've had friends and family come here, and we've done our own tour guiding, taken them to places, and they've said things like, "We never knew this existed." They really thought that Portugal was Lisbon,
Yeah.
basically not just Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were thinking, and for us, Portugal is so many, like Carmen said, you turn down a road or an alley and there's an amazing view that you don't normally see. And
Yeah.
I think that just got the bug for us. And, we blended uh, our
Backgrounds
backgrounds,
with,
yeah,
yeah.
and came up with this idea.
Yeah, I love it. And I think the way that you do it is really interesting because there's a lot of companies I see in sort of the sustainable travel space that pop up and are like, we want to use local guides and we want to give back to the communities. And that's all fantastic. But what you guys have done is kind of unique in the sense that it's like, it's just Portugal. And I don't imagine there's like plans to expand that because of the business model that you have, right?
Yep, it
Yeah,
is completely dedicated to Portugal. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So when people come, they know that they're getting like a complete Portugal expert experience that is centered around everything this country has to offer. I think I really love it. Like, I think it's great. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of like we'll come on to kind of immersive Portugal in a bit, but just to kind of tell us a little bit more about the business. What are the trips like that you guys book? Because we said at the start it's a lot of foodie adventures, kind of getting people away from the main like international tourist hubs. What can people expect if they book a tour with you?
So I will start with, we've done Sintra, going back to where we talked about in the beginning. We understand that everyone wants to go to Sintra and they want to
And
see
they should. They
palaces,
should.
and they
It's
should
a beautiful.
absolutely. But where we may put a twist on that is what happens after. You're usually exhausted, you've been walking all day. So our tour would start afterward. And so there's a little bit of a luxe experience included in this tour, but you would stay at a local, a palace in this case, with rich history. You would then spend your time the next morning just enjoying yourself and relaxing a bit, and then going to a local vineyard where it's Adega de Colares. It is a vineyard that is very specialized. All of the grapes are grown in sand, so you learn about the culture. You have some petiscos, which are like tapas, and then you would go to other palaces that you wouldn't visit at all. You would go to Mafra Palace, which has been the most recently used palace by what was the royal family. You would go up the coast to Ericeira and experience the surf culture there, and just take your time, and then stay in Ericeira, a fishing village. So not at all like the typical tuk-tuk, Sintra, then back to Lisbon. It would be slowing down and really understanding the food culture, the wine culture, the scenery, which is its breathtaking coast, and then making your way down to Cascais. So you can get back to Lisbon, but all of that happens over the span of 3 days instead of, in 40 minutes,
Yeah. So you don't do a typical day trip to Sintra at all. It would be at least 2 days in the Sintra area and then moving on to kind of smaller towns as well to get a bit more of the experience of that region.
Yes,
exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
And more of the views and the local food and all of that is included. That's another thing. So the food experiences, they're all included in that, so that you don't really have to worry about it or figure it out. We have the best recommendations from our local partners and guides on all of that.
And who's the guide when you're doing all of that?
So we have several who are experts in different areas. So the Sintra guide is not the Ericeira expert. So we're partnered locally with everyone in those regions.
Yeah, so like every different region, I suppose, has their own thing. I this is a bit off track, but I have noticed recently, because I've been doing this little fun series on social media about making a dish from each country in the world. And what I've realized as I've been doing this is that within every country, you've got these hundreds of regions that all have their own like specific dishes. And obviously, you guys are from the States. So when I got to the US, I had like a figurative meltdown because I was like, where do I start?
Yeah.
So I fully appreciate this like outlook of, right, we're going to take each region and use the experts there, because it's so true that if I'm in the UK living in London, that doesn't make me an expert in, say, Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an example that I like to use when we talk about the different regions here. And you're right, there are a lot of different regions where the food changes, where the wine is different, the cheese is different, the pastries are different, the style of dress is different. And that's really interesting. So we want our clients to be able to see all these different things and realize, and I know I'm going back to this again, realize it's more than just Lisbon.
Yeah.
So an example that I use, the pastel de nata, which I think at this point everybody's heard of. That's a pastry that was born, had its beginnings in the Lisbon area in a town called Belém. And you can find it pretty much throughout the country now. Some people say the best ones are down in the Lisbon area. Okay, I agree with that. But if you go just 50 miles outside of Lisbon, all of a sudden there's all these different kind of pastries. And then 25 miles that way, there's a different kind of pastry. Sintra has its own pastry, which is amazing, I have to say. I don't remember what it's called, unfortunately. But it's just from different region to different region, the changes in food, dress, culture, everything is really
and
landscape.
landscape. I mean, absolutely stunning. I think so many people don't really know just beaches, vineyards, countryside. It all changes within
mountains, savannas.
30 minutes. It all can open up and completely change. Yeah.
And in the comparative scheme of things, like Portugal is a very small country, which
Very
Yeah.
small country.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I was
Yeah.
just going to say we're from the States, and so we have the Rocky Mountains, but they're really far away from the deserts that we have. And here, you've got mountains right next to a savanna type area. You've got a beach right next to I don't know, like
Vineyards
a
and rolling
vineyard. Yeah,
hills. Yeah.
everything is really compacted, which is really nice.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's one of those countries I think that whenever you go, like whenever we go, whenever my husband and I go, we're always like, we should move here. Like, and I think that's in lots of ways that's part of its charm. We won't, don't worry, but like that's part of its charm. And I think it's got this real culture of like it's a very lovely place everywhere you go, and everywhere has its own unique things to experience, which is fantastic. So that actually brings me really nicely to my next question, which was, I guess, what is it about Portugal for you two? Because you said you've been to a lot of different places, particularly you, Carmen. So what made you stick with Portugal?
Can I answer this?
Yeah,
Just to start.
you
Go
can.
ahead.
Okay, the story Carmen hates hearing the story at this point. But yeah, we came here in 2017, and she and I had done some travel. We'd been to the Caribbean, we'd been to other places in Europe, and we always kind of had it in mind that we wanted to probably move at some point out of the
Probably for
States,
retirement.
probably for retirement, right?
But yeah.
The later years. And so we would gauge places when we went to the Caribbean. We talked like, oh, could we live here? No, because of this, that, the other thing. And we came in 2017 here, and on the last night that we were here, we were in Lisbon. We were staying in this beautiful family-run hotel that was in an old palace, or an old castle or something.
No, not a castle. It's more like a palisade, I guess. I mean, it's a home with like an interior courtyard. But yeah, go ahead.
With this beautiful look over Rossio Square. And as we were sitting there was just this din in the air, and it was quiet, but there was activity. We were looking down at the lights and the people, and there was this sound of fado music coming up from one of the dark alleys below us. And fado music is kind of not the national music, but it's a traditional music here. And we were just, I mean, it just felt like we were in a totally different headspace. And she asked me, she looked at me and said, "Do you think you could live here?" And I didn't even think about it. I said, "Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
And then it happened after the pandemic. We decided we were going to do it. I mean, Portugal, our 2 weeks here in Portugal stuck with us, is what I'm trying to say.
And then we came back again, and then we tried, traveling through the Azores. And I guess to simply answer this question, Portugal has its own vibe. There's a very welcoming feel from the people. The architecture is incredible. Just the ability to calm down. We're from New York City, so it does not seem like a good mix, really. I mean, it's go, 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 and I love New York, but there's a vibe and a feeling that comes over you. And for us, at least, I think for me, it felt like this could be home, and it felt like this is the kind of place where you can build things and have ideas, but also do them in a way that you don't want to change, what makes this special and what makes you fall in love with it. You want to try to embrace it as much as possible and add to it. And I think that's what it was for us. Can we do something special and help keep it special in the process? And I think that's why Portugal for me.
That's wonderful, because I think a lot of people would have that idea of, I want to come here, oh, but I would change like X, Y, and Z. And especially being from the UK, we have a lot of like, I don't really know how to describe this without being insulting, but like mini Englands in places where people go and like overrun the communities because they just like want. Like a great example is on the south coast of Spain in the Costa del Sol. There's a lot of like little towns where British people have unfortunately just fallen in love, but they've gone and they've changed so much of it that it's just not representative of Spain anymore. Like when you go, all you can hear is English voices, and I think it's really admirable to want to go and preserve rather than go and change.
I mean, I think that's the only way. I mean, when you fall in love with the fact that I don't know, it calms your soul and it's a beautiful place. Why try to change the things that you love? Try to preserve them and help the economy, help the local economy. But no, I mean, for us, it's definitely about preservation and I guess, sustaining the culture.
Yeah, yeah. I was reading this. That's quite a hot topic at the moment, or at least in what I've been seeing. That like this notion of when we travel, we need to stop traveling with this like me-centric attitude. And I actually saw it described, it was really interesting. Someone was like, we need to stop traveling like colonizers and start traveling like guests. And I think that's actually quite a nice way to describe it. Obviously, it doesn't really fit with Portugal so well, but like we do need to go and be like, it's not about me, it's about the place I'm visiting.
You get more out of it that way, don't you? I mean, if you go as like you said, as a guest, I love that. I've never heard that, but yeah, I think Carmen and I travel like that. We're guests wherever we go.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just get so much more out of travel if you go with that attitude, for sure.
And on a personal level, I'm an immigrant 2 times. My family is originally from Panama. I'm first generation American, so I kind of grew up with that feeling. I'm American, but there's the learning and the culture fit and all of that. So I think that's ingrained in me, but it makes the whole experience so much more, and it makes you much more appreciative of your hosts.
Yeah.
Hosts are welcoming you, and just be mindful and respectful of their culture, and bring what you have, but also don't try to change the norms and the mores without at least understanding them first.
Maybe it's like you kind of have that traveling vibe in your brain, Carmen, because you're like, a two-time immigrant. It's like you always want to be somewhere new and trying different things. That's really cool. I am also my dad was born in, well, it's a bit different, but he was born in Ireland. So then we came to the UK and I have like such itchy feet as well. So maybe there's something to that. And so being from the States, you must have family still over there. Do you guys?
Yes.
And do they come and visit?
Yes, we just had family visit for the holidays for almost 3 weeks, and that was also very interesting for them to see how Christmas is celebrated and the holidays are celebrated. Just it's a different cultural experience, and when you can slow it down and really enjoy the differences, it's so much more enriching. They're still talking about it.
Yeah, I bet. Like, what an experience for them. So, is Christmas? Can you talk us through how Christmas is different from Portugal versus the US? Because I'm not familiar with either.
Well, in the United States, Christmas is very, very commercialized, and everything. Not everything. A lot of it is all about, what you buy for other people. It's a lot about the gift giving.
I think that Portugal has a more, I guess, organic approach to the way Christmas is done. So, as Michael mentioned, every town has their own display. If it's a town, there's a town nearby called Leiria. They have a castle. The castle is all lit up, and there's a little village, and there's a like Christmas village down below, and those types of things. But it's more about family gatherings, more of an organic feel. And in the US, Christmas is like the holiday of all holidays. It's just
exhausting.
It can be. It can be.
It is.
Yeah, it starts right around Thanksgiving and ends around the New Year. It's an event. So I think that's the difference. It's a quieter, simpler, more organic, but very beautiful and charming and quaint. In Portugal and in the United States, it's a loud event, which is it's very fun, but it's also big.
Yeah. It sounds kind of similar to how Christmas in the UK is becoming, which I think the word I would use is commercialized. Like it's become quite there's a lot of emphasis, as you said, Michael, on kind of overconsumption and like getting the best present for whoever you can. And while that's like kind of with good intention and sort of lovely in a way, like it can take away from, I guess, I mean, I'm not religious, but like the meaning of the holiday, I suppose, or like what it's meant to be about. And I think that sounds like Portugal's kind of captured the essence of like celebrating, but with a kind of calmness to it.
Yeah.
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 Nice. That's really nice. So that's obviously a very unique experience having Christmas and being able to celebrate that in a country that I guess like has become your own but wasn't your own originally. What other experiences would you say that you've had? Because when we spoke originally, there was a lot you were telling me that I was like, wow, I didn't even know this existed. So what have been some of your favorite experiences that you've had in Portugal or that you've shown to others?
That's such a difficult, and we knew that this question was going to come up, and it's really such a difficult question to answer because every single day, it seems every single day there's an experience that's amazing for us. Because Carmen and I live here, we really have the advantage of every day being an immersive experience for us because we're still immigrants. We've been here for 3 years, and for a long time, we're going to consider ourselves immigrants. So when we traveled here in 2017 as tourists, our immersive experiences were, yes, going to Lisbon, going to some castles, driving from here to there, and seeing things completely new. And now that we live here, things aren't so much new for us as that we're immersing ourselves as residents now. We're beyond tourists now. We're still immigrants. So for us, an immersive experience is still going to the market and speaking Portuguese to someone. As we're learning the Portuguese language, it's allowing us to get even deeper into the culture and connect more to the people, connect more to the community we live in. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a difficult thing to answer because every day seems to be immersive to me.
Yeah.
I think from the perspective of, more tourism, there are a lot of places that aren't on the map in Portugal. So, Berlenga Island, it's this little uninhabited UNESCO World Heritage site that unless someone told you or you kind of dug into information, you wouldn't know, but it's um, from an ecotourism point of view in terms of protecting local wildlife and being able to kind of hike along a space that really there's a limit on how many tourists can go every day. You wouldn't know. It's not on the map, but it's a beautiful place. The water is this crystal green blue. There are caves. There are all of these things that um, unless you kind of had that insider view or had local kind of give you the experience around it, you wouldn't know it exists. Little towns like Obidos, it's now more on the map, but it's a village within medieval walls that are very well preserved. Those kinds of experiences where you can kind of step back in time or step into a place that's really pristine, or the Douro Valley is very popular, but it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning, and it takes your breath away. All of those vistas are very immersive, but as Michael mentioned, from a food and kind of lived experience point of view as well, going to the market. Being able to try those local dishes by region. We live in a region of Portugal where the apples are like the star, and they pears, are, yeah. And pears, and they're absolutely phenomenal. And you're like, this is delicious. I've had many apples, but this, there's a reason they're award winning, or different vineyards. So being able to have those experiences and kind of understand that one, they exist, and two, they're absolutely phenomenal. Is really immersive for me. And when we have guests or when we have our clients, these are the kinds of things that we try to showcase, that there's just so much more beyond the landscapes, which are incredible, but culturally too, just the ability to connect with all of these wonderful things and artisanry. We haven't even gotten into that, is amazing.
And I think this is so important because when we see, so I mentioned before we started this podcast on email to you guys that I was a bit unsure about using the phrase like off the beaten track and hidden gems, that kind of thing. And I think we've developed this culture, particularly on social media, where we share these things and we go, this is a hidden gem. And, there's various things about like geotagging and gatekeeping and like everybody should be able to share and all that kind of thing. And I do like to, for the most part, agree with that kind of thing within leave no trace principles. But then you've got this idea of like what you guys are doing, which is local tourism, which actually exists. And there are locals who are going to the places you're describing, like was it Bengara Island? You said I'm butchering that. What was it? Sorry, Carmen.
Berlinga.
Belinga, yeah, Belinga Island. Like when you've got people who are going to this place, like that's a place that if it was suddenly to go viral, like that kind of ruins the what it is to the locals. So when we have this culture of calling it like a hidden gem or off the beaten track, that's like well and good, but it shouldn't be used as a means to get people to flock there, in my opinion. It's like treat it with a little more respect, have it as an immersive experience, have it as somewhere that fine people go, but they understand this ecotourism aspect, the culture, the fact that, like you mentioned, the Douro Valley as well, the fact that the food culture and the wine there is so, it's everything to those people, you know?
Yes, yes,
And
absolutely.
coming back to your point, Martin, which it's instilled in my brain now, travel like a guest. I
Yeah.
think it's the best advice that you could give someone. Always be a guest. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think so. Like travel, I had somebody on the podcast not long ago, whose name, she's brilliant. Her name is Curiosity Saves Travel on Instagram, Susanna. And her whole kind of ethos is kind of regenerative travel over even sustainable travel. So she goes and she says with a complete open mind to experience everything as it is given to her by locals. Like so she doesn't go with any, or she tries not to go with any preconceptions. When she speaks to local people, she understands that not all local people are a monolith, and she tries to kind of engage with what one person's saying versus another. And I really think this is so important to understand that like we actually know nothing when we go as a tourist or like even as an immigrant in the first place. Like we don't know anything, and we have to go in with open minds and learn.
Yep, absolutely.
That's very true.
Completely agree. And we should have open minds and open hearts and take the time to listen, understand, and learn. I mean, isn't that why we travel to
Yeah,
begin with? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And some of the like, because I know you do, don't you do festival tours as well?
What do we do?
Festival tours.
Oh, festival tours, yeah.
Yes, it's one of the things that we're working on.
Yeah.
So we are getting to Carnival season here in Portugal. Also, there are different festivals throughout this. So that's another thing about Portugal. There is almost always a festival
Somewhere.
somewhere at some time. And so, yes, that's one of the areas we're working on, making sure that we can do that in a way that is enriching to our guests, but also where we can make sure that people understand what's happening. We don't want to take away again from the event and like bus 40 people into the middle of something. But that's one of the things we're working on specifically right now around Carnival.
And just to add on that really quickly, when we take people to something like Carnival, we also want them to experience the food of the region. Again, we're going back to that root. We want to make it a larger experience than just Carnival. We don't want to bus you to Carnival to watch it for 3 hours and then go back somewhere. We want you to do Carnival and then maybe even stay in that town or the next town over and see a castle or stay in a family inn or something. We want to build something out of that festival for our guests.
And Carnival in Portugal is not a monolith. So there are 5 different towns that have their own version of it. So that's another thing. We're striking the right balance with the guidance of our friends and tour guides here who are helping us understand what some of those things should look like and what feels authentic.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like because you guys put a lot of thought into whether or not you add an experience before you do it, like that must take a lot of planning.
It does take a lot of planning and how to do it in a way that A feels authentic, but also we can provide the right level of, as travelers, we do have expectations, and so there's wish list type things that sometimes will come up. So we want to make sure that you get an incredible view or incredible stay, or you get something really unique that you can come back home with and really remember. But how do we tie that to really pure and authentic experience? And striking that balance is, yeah, striking that balance is what takes a lot of time. Yeah.
And I guess so when we're talking about immersive travel, I think, and this is something that we probably haven't like talked about before, the three of us, but over tourism in Portugal is a really big issue right now. And I personally do think, and I say this a lot on my page, that actually going and traveling the way that locals want you to and trying to do it in a more immersive way is the antidote in a way. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. Yeah. Do you want to start?
No, no.
So, I mean, basically, since the pandemic, tourism has grown in Portugal, I think like 10, 11% year over year. It's like a lot of change really, really fast. And I completely agree. I think one of the things that cultural immersion allows you to do is Lisbon's completely overrun with tourists at times and you can't move. By looking maybe 20 minutes outside, not only are you helping the local economy there, local accommodations there, local artisanry, all of that, but you're also giving people a new experience. So in terms of spreading out some of where the tourism happens and giving new experiences, it helps with at least the perception a lot of people have around tourists come in and like they're changing everything. If that's able to spread out a bit and able to help the local economy a bit, it makes a difference. It really does.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is the whole thing is that tourists get frustrated because they're like, well, we're helping the economy. And locals are like, but are you? Like, I don't see that. All I see is you ruining things. And I think it's very, very understandable, this conflict that arises because ultimately tourism should help, like it really should. And the fact that it doesn't, I think, is because typical extractive tourism, we kind of have it wrong. We should be doing it the way that you guys are, in my opinion.
We hope so. I mean, the kind of tick list and the mad rush is exhausting for I think everyone, including the locals
Yeah.
who are like, okay, I can't walk down my street, I can't leave my house, and so yes, slowing down and making sure that there's a benefit to everyone, I think really does help.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was going to ask actually, because you've mentioned Lisbon a few times, and I know that you do still do tours that start in Lisbon or that go around Lisbon. What would people expect in a typical, I guess, Lisbon-centric itinerary, or do you do that at all, or no?
That's a really interesting question. And the quick answer is right now we don't really focus on Lisbon.
Mhm.
And that's because there, especially during the tourist months, there is a sort of stress on Lisbon at this point with the number of tourists coming in. And our thing has always been from the start, and I honestly don't know why this was a thing for us, but let's get people out of Lisbon. Not because Lisbon is bad, but as we mentioned earlier, there's so much more to see.
Mhm.
There's so much stress on Lisbon during the tourist season. For us, when we go someplace and there's such over tourism that you can't move. One example I think of immediately for myself is we went to Versailles, and there
Mm.
were so many people in the it was the palace, right? And the palace, you couldn't enjoy yourself. You couldn't stop and just look at a display of something. So that's why when we go places, we go to Lisbon for 2 or 3 days, but then we get out of Lisbon and we get away from the tourists and we see what else is out there. So typically our packages at this point do not include an overstay in Lisbon. We take people out of Lisbon.
And the only thing I would add to that is on the corporate side of things, because that's one of the areas we're working on. A lot of times, and I've been part of this business travel, where you're in a hotel in the center of town and you're in that hotel for 5 days. You don't see the sun really, and you're in this beautiful place, but you have no idea about the culture or anything else. Lisbon is the kind of the center there, but we're working on experiences now where maybe you get to a different neighborhood or you get to at least the outskirts and you get into the Alentejo region a little bit because it's only a 40-minute drive away. So we're looking at ways to be within 40 minutes and offer something that gives you a little bit of a flavor without being too taxing on your time. But still, to Michael's point, it's about kind of spreading the experience out a bit from Lisbon.
So I know that you guys offer packages like for just straight up tourists, but you also, I think I'm interpreting from what you're saying, Carmen, and from what I've seen on your site, you also offer kind of like extensions for business travelers who might want to see a little bit more and not just do that I'm staying in my hotel for 5 days thing.
Correct. Yep. Yeah,
It's incredible. And then, so just to come on to, we've obviously covered a lot of elements of sustainable travel in this, but I do ask like all of my guests what sustainable travel means to them and like what that phrase, if they could, I guess if you could see it as like a perfect way to travel, like what would that mean for you guys?
I think there are some practical things that means, and that, it's simple things like staying at, again, very simple, staying at a hotel with either wind power or solar power, or a hotel that does their own farm to table, which is something we try to focus on here with our guests, is sending them to hotels that have their own gardens and to make some, or if not all of their food from the things they grow, from the animals that they raise. It's what else?
Yeah, I think that's more the typical idea, and we try to do that whenever we can with accommodations. But I think the definition of sustainable travel is really sustaining the culture. Uh, and so, as we're planning things, as we're traveling, what are we doing so that we can make sure that the things that we love, that we want to go see, remain, and we sustain that. So, really, making sure that they're local accommodations, that we're helping the local economy, that we're experiencing things that help to sustain and promote the culture so that fado music doesn't die off.
Yeah.
So, that local bakery, pasteleria doesn't die off because those are the things that we're coming to experience and we think are so special and new and different. So that's really kind of the definition of sustainable travel, sustaining the culture and local economy that make those experiences possible.
Yeah, I think it's kind of all of those things, like, and it's just so much, isn't it? Like you've got to consider, like Michael was saying, like these natural environments, making sure that like the hotels are really doing like the best they can and that we're not flying everywhere. But then you've got this like culture and heritage that needs to be preserved. And it's so important. I was going to tell you guys, I went to see Fado in Lisbon and it was terrifying. Like it was it was so funny. I mean, it was an amazing experience. But so Murray and I, my husband and I, had it was ages ago now, I'd say before we were even really like thinking about the concept of sustainable travel. And we'd flown into Lisbon and it was maybe like 10 p.m. And we were like, we should go do that Fado thing. Like we heard about Fado, it would be really cool. Or no, sorry, it would have been earlier then. So maybe about 7. And we went to this street that in Lisbon that has a load of Fado music. And there was a guy who's like, yeah, we're offering a Fado experience. Like you can come in here. And we went in, Murray had some dinner. And then they basically were like, okay, we're locking the doors. And we were like, what? And they were like, yep, we're locking the doors. The whole experience is like a time for quiet. Like we want you to immerse yourself in the music and in what we're doing. They literally locked us in until 1 a.m. and we're just like, you have to stay here and listen to the music. So I would love to try it again, not with that, but with you guys, where it's not as scary.
We can make sure that that can be arranged.
Wow.
Wow.
Weird. Like they were like, if one of us got up to go to the toilet, they were like, you need to wait until the song is finished. Like you can't go to the toilet during the song. We were like, okay.
That is a little scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for enjoying the music, but I was like, maybe we need to, still be able to go to the bathroom. Um, how do you guys do Fado? I guess it's a little bit different from that.
It's a bit different from that. I mean, again, we try to work with local partners as much as possible. So our experience is not in Lisbon, in a place that's kind of regimented like that. There is a monastery in Alcobaça. And yes, you need to respect the music, you need to be quiet, but it's in an open courtyard. So you get the beautiful architecture of the monastery, you have the dinner, but you've got that indoor, outdoor, and then also just the beautiful voice. Where it's more of an open, natural experience while you're within the architecture. So and this monastery in Alcobaça is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that's, I guess, another thing that people don't know. There are 17 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Portugal. And I mean, they're all stunning and phenomenal. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that already sounds so much better. It's like a set show that you're going to see. Because then if I knew that, I would have like, gone to the bathroom and eaten and like been a bit more relaxed. But yeah, that's perfect. So you're just there to enjoy the show. And the music, isn't it? Sea, like from sailors and that kind of thing.
It is. It's a very I'm going to kill myself here because I can't remember the Portuguese word.
Saudade.
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 It's kind of hard to explain, but my understanding of it is mostly for the people that stayed behind as the fishermen and the discoverers went out into the world. And it's that sense of longing for something or someone that you love that is out there. They have to be out there because fishing and discovery was so important to people. And you understand they have to be there, but it's a longing, right?
That basically describes the kernel, the soul, the heart of that music and where it came from.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful like tradition and piece of Portuguese history, I think. Yeah. So that's kind of all my questions. Do you guys have anything else you want to add about like immersive travel in Portugal or your company or anything like that?
I have something, yeah. We were thinking, Emma, as we were thinking about your questions and thinking about talking about sustainable travel and immersive travel. And, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the family we met that had, been all these places. They did Sintra, they did this, and everything was a blur to them. And part of sustainability and immersive travel is, I think about, say someone's coming from the States, they're spending money on an airline ticket. They're spending that time in the air. They're paying for hotels here. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of personal energy that goes into travel. There's resources. When you get somewhere, travel in a way that gives you return on all that energy and all those resources, personally speaking.
Yeah.
That fills you with something, that gives you real memories, that changes the way you think and feel about the world and about people around the world. And because you're expending all that, yes, I mean, build something in yourself. And it sounds like such a huge kind of idea that I'm talking about, but I'm saying don't spend all that time, money, and resources and energy and go somewhere and just
snap photos
snap photos and rush and not, it shouldn't be a blur when you're done. It should not be a blur.
Yeah. I think there are lots of different types of travelers, but to my mind, there's kind of these two groups where one will go to literally shut off from everything. They don't want to experience like local culture. They really want to relax. And you know what, like fair enough, that's a kind of different thing. But then there are people who are like, I want to see everything, I want to experience everything. And they do, as you say, they just run around in this rat race. And I really think there's something to be said of if you really want to be on the go all the time, maybe you could make it a bit more meaningful. And there are people starting to do this now, and I definitely think it's such a more beneficial way to travel.
Absolutely. And on the relaxed side, I like to be able to relax as well. Coming from New York, there were definitely those vacations, but there's a way to do that as well in a way that, you think about how you can help the local economy and maybe it's much slower, but there are ways to do that as well. But I think that pretty much is the last thing that I think we wanted to say on that point. I think in terms of what we're working on and different experiences, We have a lot more foodie experiences that we're working on and thinking through, and how to make those really special in very special settings and landscapes. So we're excited about the work that we're doing there. And
I guess it's always building the website and that kind of thing, like all these experiences being added. I see you guys working on it, and I think it really looks like at some point you're going to be able to get to every corner of Portugal just through you guys, and I think that's really cool. So that's what you're working on. Where can people find you?
Primarily on our website, ruamar.co. And we're working on being available through TripAdvisor and other areas in a way that is small, but also accessible.
And if people want to book one of your tours?
They can just go directly to our website, and we'll be there ready for them.
Amazing. Well, this has been the Sustainable Travel Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Sustainable Travel Podcast, or you can find us on Spotify. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're just the Sustainable Travel Podcast on there. We're also on YouTube, and we have a Facebook group which is called Sustainable Travel Tips Group. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. On the very next topic.
Thank you.